What's up, peeps? I'm Jen, and I'd like to welcome you back to Copper Cactus DIY. Today's video, yeah, she's a doozy. I'm attempting to fix a seriously warped, seriously dried out pine cabinet. The plan is to give it a rich mahogany faux finish, and the stakes here are pretty high. That's because I'm doing this cabinet as a gift for my mom. If you like furniture repair and faux finishing videos, then stick around to see if I can pull this off, or if I leave my mom in tears. Alright. Let's figure this out. When I flipped this thing over, I discovered a bunch of old spider cocoons and lots of dust. My mom also lives in Arizona, and if you've watched my channel for a while, you've definitely heard me say that this is the driest place on Earth. Alright, that's a slight exaggeration, but only slight, because it is in the top 5. Dust is just our nemesis here. But my shop vac made quick work of everything. I grabbed a Japan scraper and my Gorilla wood glue to fix this crack. It didn't go all the way up the side, thankfully, so I only had about 3 inches to fill in and clamp. So we had to take this cabinet apart just to get it to our place from my mom's place. It was about 1.5 inches too wide to fit in the back of our vehicle. But removing pieces left a lot of nails, so I removed those with a hammer. For the nails everywhere else, the only part I could get was at the sharp point, so instead of trying to pull with the hammer, I attempted to push them out by hammering. It worked better on some than others, but in the end, I just used brute force until I yanked that last nail out with my needle nose pliers. To give this wood a fighting chance, I used a makeup brush and applied a very generous coat of Howard Feed and Wax to the entire underside of the cabinet. And to be honest, I might actually do a second coat on anything that I'm not painting and sealing. Like I said, this wood is super dry, so I also am not planning to wipe back any excess. Actually, there wasn't any. I also got the back with a coat of Howard, but once again, I questioned my abilities as a YouTuber. Okay, she's done, even though you couldn't see me do it. Sorry about that. I'm gonna let this basically just cure up overnight. I doubt there's gonna be any excess. There never is, not here in Phoenix, and not with wood this dry. But I guess I'm just gonna keep going. I wanted to make sure these pieces would go back together as snug as possible. They already had plenty of challenges in that department, so I just used a chisel to remove any chunks. There was definitely some glue and raised wood left over after removing this side, and I used the chisel kind of like a hand plane just to get everything smooth and flat. I went really slow because I didn't need to take any more chunks out of the wood. Then I vacuumed off all the debris and repeated that process everywhere that it needed it. I tapped the staples out of this cleat in the same way that I did the nails from the side panel. With the cleat braced by a clamp, I hammered the points until the curved part poked through on the other side. Then I just grabbed my needle nose pliers to pull the staples out. But of course, because it's me, I pulled every other one of them in like 10 seconds, but the second I start to film it, at that point, I knew I had my work cut out for me, but that I should be able to get the side reattached and square things up. I just didn't really know how to do it. So I moved stuff and I tried every which way to get things lined up correctly. This was definitely going to take some creative ingenuity. Okay, let's talk, people. You can probably see it anyway from here. I'll zoom back out. All right, if the floor is level, I feel like you can see what the issue is here, right? Like, this thing slopes about 1.5 inches out of level. I arranged the clamps so that they would hold the shelves in place where I needed them for level. Pre-drilled, added a countersink so the screws will sit beneath the surface, and attached the pieces together using a sturdy row of screws. Then it came time to figure out the top and center divider. I spent a long time just measuring, using the level, and trying to talk myself into maybe cutting down the sides and center divider. To get the cabinet into our vehicle, I was going to have to cut off about 1 inch, but then it hit me. I had to cut the center divider too if I did the sides, otherwise it would throw off the pinholes for the shelf. So I measured that out too, and I started locating my power tools. But things were generally square at that point, so I opted to not make any cuts. Instead, I used clamps to hold the pieces back in square, pre-drilled to avoid splitting, countersunk, and attached the pieces with screws, just like I did before. And I did the same with the right side off camera. Okay, oh, here's hoping. Let's lift her up. She's so creaky. She's so creaky. Okay. Where'd you go? Here you are. All right, and of course we're not on camera. Let's do that then. Okay. No, it's not. I can already tell, but I don't think it's as bad as I think it is. Oh, fucking God. Yes. Okay. She's level, baby. Okay. Man, considering how badly warped this thing is, I'm calling this a win. Now I'm just gonna have to figure out how to transport it back to my mom. All right, yeah, let's talk actually. Okay, when I was doing all those screws, I don't know if you saw it, but all of these pretty much kind of cracked because this wood is so dry. I will I'm going to wood fill anything that's like old anyway, and I countersunk these screws so that I could wood fill on top of it so this would all look like smooth and be good. So anywhere that there's like these, I'm gonna just put some glue in there with a syringe, and then I'll clamp it and leave this for a couple hours. Since the wood was still a bit warped, I didn't want to chance the long clamp pressure, making that any worse. So I used a couple of bracing pieces and a clamp to keep the corner flat. Then I added the squeezing pressure with the long clamp. And I did it all again on the other side. I left the glue to dry overnight, and I checked one last time for level. Booyah, baby. So my year-old wood filler is fully dried out. Phoenix, seriously. But I won't waste that dried out filler. I turn it into a powder, then add a little water plus a squeeze of wood glue. It should be about a brownie batter consistency, and I used about 5 parts filler to 1 part water and 1 part glue. I added a thin first coat to all of the screws, any cracks, and some knots. Then I left it to dry and cure overnight. The next morning, I went in with a second self-made filler coat, but for the second coat, I didn't add any glue. I just used a splash of water in the dried powder wood fill. Then I left that to dry for about 3 hours before doing a third and final fill coat wherever it was necessary. Once the last coat was dry, I sanded everything down to flat and smooth using a 240 grit sandpaper and my random orbital sander. This didn't take very long at all. I just wanted to be sure to feather out the wood fill and knock off any chunks from the surface. I started out by vacuuming up most of the dust. After vacuuming, I used a barely damp rag to wipe up the remainder of the dust off all the surfaces. Then I left it to dry for the night. I'm using one of my brand new, very favorite stain blocking primers. This one is actually from Melange, and so far it hasn't failed me in blocking out stains or even these knots from bleeding through. Love it! Then I got to painting, but first I changed into paint clothes. I'm using my 2-inch straight cut putty to apply this paint, and yes, I'm using latex paint. I know a bunch of people might find that appalling, but in this case, it's perfectly fine. For starters, this piece is nostalgic to my client, but it isn't fine furniture. It's constructed of very dry pine, so it likely won't ever get refinished. Secondly, latex works great as a base for faux, and since that's the plan for this cabinet, latex paint was the best choice for me. Also, I brushed the entire cabinet purposefully. Latex won't completely self-level, and I wanted some potential graining marks on the base coat. That's just going to help the faux feel more realistic once it's done. In total, it took me a little over an hour to brush this entire cabinet. I let it dry for about 2 hours before coming back to start the faux. For the first coat of faux, I laid down this undergraining. This is going to be my darkest layer, and I always add that first so that the glaze and stain layers that I put on above it help to deepen the tone as well as help to soften these harsh lines. This is truly a time to trust the process because right now, yeah, it looks worse than the expression on my face. Once that dried, I could add my first stain coat. For this coat, I'm using a red tinted stain and seal from Faux Effects mixed with glaze. And I'm really sorry that I don't have an exact ratio here. This whole process is more just about feeling it out until it looks right. Oh, and I made a sample board off camera to make sure I did get things right. Also, you'll notice I'm only working on the vertical areas to start, so once these dry, I'll swap this tape over and do the exact same steps again on all of the horizontal parts. The third coat I thinned out quite a bit and I tinted it with more of a brown undertone. Now, I know that this looks really red on camera, but I assure you, in life, this is really more of a reddish brown. I used an angled pouncing brush to apply it directionally, and then I left the piece to dry overnight. In the morning, I could add my final glaze coat. We call that the toning glaze, or sometimes it's called an overglaze. For this coat, I used a green-based brown stain, and I'm doing that so that I can slightly counteract the heavy red undertones. I do want some red because I'm going for mahogany here, but in order for this cabinet to better match my client's other furniture, it needs to be a richer brown tone. Once I finished the faux in any area, I pulled the tape immediately. And I repeated this entire process on the 2 loose shelves. Not gonna lie, I legit almost forgot to even paint these, but I pulled it together in the end and they get the same special faux treatment. For finishing touches, I added some stain and seal to the inside of the pinholes. If you saw my short recently, then you actually saw how I sanded out these holes so that the pins would perfectly fit. If you haven't seen that though, I'll link that video below if you want to go check it out. Because this cabinet gets a lot of wear and definitely gets daily use, I gave the entire thing 3 very decent coats of Varathane's satin poly. I hand brushed the top coat as well, just so it would better flow into any graining marks and not leave any orange peel weirdness behind. After this was done, I left this cabinet to fully cure for about 3 weeks. And all that time on my hands also gave me plenty of time to scrub the hardware in a vinegar bath and then add some antique gold rub and buff. Sadly, I forgot to film myself doing any of the rub and buff, but here's a picture of evidence of the last thing that I had to do before delivering this cabinet back to its owner. I bet you're wondering about that part where I said this cabinet wouldn't fit in our vehicle. I got the cabinet completely wrapped up and protected, and then we went and rented a U-Haul cargo trailer.
The only goal is to keep it from sliding to the back, so.
Yep.
Goal achieved.
Goal achieved.
It'll still have, it could move a hair, but
it's okay.
it ain't gonna go through.